There we go. Hello. Let me turn your volume up a little bit. You're quite quiet.
All right.
You're still a little bit quiet
I
for me.
almost was just gonna message
Oh.
you and go, "Oh, sorry, man, something fell through," and then I thought, that's not even fucking funny.
That would have been a good
Like
one.
that
I
would
would
have
have
been
fell for
funny
that.
two or three connections ago. It wouldn't be fucking funny.
No, it's, you would have got me. You would have got me.
Ah, fuck.
No,
No,
it's a pleasure.
that.
It's good to finally have you here. It's good to have you here.
Thanks, man. Yeah, sorry about that. It's just been an insane couple of weeks. It's like I have the good fortune of having a lot of cool shit to do, but then you add traveling and quarantining and all this kind of stuff on top of it, and it gets bonkers.
Yeah, yeah, I bet. How's it been? How like you were over? Where were you again? You were over in with
I was in Florida
yeah,
last, but I was
Florida.
in Europe before that.
Yeah, how's it been?
Good. Yeah. I'm good. I mean, in theory, I'm supposed to stay in my house, even though now I have three negative COVID tests. So I have an apartment in my studio. So I'm here now, which is great because then I can do stuff. But if I'm at my home, which is an hour 45 away, I have the world's shittiest Wi-Fi. Just I live in a small town, and so there's just all these moving parts. But things are good. Like I'm lucky. I got it good.
I mean, you were you at the Bellator fight with Venom Page then? You got to see
No,
that's the
no, I wasn't at that one. I was in
oh
Florida commentating the week before, or maybe the night before.
oh times
I was in
times
Yeah,
merged.
I was in Florida commentating CES on UFC Fight Pass, which is a
Oh,
great show. It's a great show. So I was there for that. I might start to go to Bellator events again, maybe later in June, because they're going to have an audience. And once they have an audience, they're less strict with us too. We don't have to do quite as many, you know, bubbles and layers of things. So I might start to go.
yeah. I bet you would have loved to have seen that knockout firsthand. That kick to the nose.
Yeah, Mike's pretty special. It's crazy. How people don't understand. No, they don't want to understand. People don't want to understand how good he is.
Of
They
course,
don't.
yeah.
They, yeah,
There's a lot
they
of
kind
hate
of have an
towards him, to be
idea in their head.
honest. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know why. But more on to you. So first off, can we kickstart this with for people that might not necessarily know what you do? If you could explain that, that would be awesome.
I used to work. I mean, I still do to some degree. I was going to say I used to work in television talking about fighting, and I still do. I work in Sports Center in Canada, and it's super fun. But I think the predominant thing I do is I study martial arts, and I try to find valuable, interesting, compelling, curious, inspiring lessons and truths. I try to reveal them within studying fighting. And then my job is then to find ways to be able to, in ways people can understand, quickly consume and access, share that with people. Um, this type of job where literally, or career or calling or whatever, where literally someone just studies something and then tries to find value in it and share it with other people, that didn't really exist 10 years ago. I would have been a television combat sports analyst.
Yeah.
Now that's one of the things I do, but at the root of what I do, I am a practicing martial artist looking for lessons within it to share with people. And if those things are valuable, people may want to pay me for it, but I typically don't want people to pay me for it. I want to make partnerships with other companies where they'll get value from it and then people can get it for free. That's sort of that's the modern interpretation of the way I see my job.
Of course.
I don't know if there's a one or two sentence way to logically make sense of that.
I
I
think that's a
analyze
way
martial
better
arts.
way. That's a way better way of saying it, I think, than a one or two sentence. I mean, why would you want to say it in one or two sentences when it's such a big thing as it is? It
You
is a
make a
big
really
thing.
good point. You make a really good point, not about this conversation, but sort of about everything.
Yeah, yeah.
We are currently living in a world where we are consuming sound bites, narratives, jargon heavy, lingo laden, quick chunks of things. And we are being tricked into thinking that's knowledge.
Yeah, indeed.
That the world would be, we're getting tricked into thinking when we hear something perfectly phrased for television or the internet that we've just learned something. And in fact, that type of phraseology was created for entertainment purposes or clicks or likes or whatever. I feel like 3-hour-long podcasts and stuff are allowing us to go the other direction, to suddenly realize where there's nuance to everything. The universe around us is actually hyper complex, and we are being almost, and I don't mean it in a there are aliens trying to control us kind of way. I don't mean it as there are elites trying to ruin our lives kind of way. I just mean we are inadvertently being sort of controlled and manipulated into believing we understand the world around us if we understand the sound bites we saw on the news or on Fox or on ESPN or wherever. And,
I mean,
and I don't want to play a part in that anymore.
I mean, you obviously have that ability to see things at in the bigger picture, because you do translate these bigger pictures into your 1 minute breakdowns or your smaller breakdowns. But those breakdowns, I guarantee you could make them so much longer than you make them, because you are translating it for those sound bites, when in reality that there's so much more complexity to those small clips that you upload.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it starts to get weirder and weirder when you pause and say, what is it Cameron is trying to accomplish? If you say, let's start a podcast, that's cool. You can start a podcast. If I say, let's analyze fighting, I can do that. But whatever we actually do, at some point, if we're going to do this for many years, let's say you're going to do some variation of what a podcast is for 30 years. Do you want to live a year 30 times? Or do you want to get better over 30 years? Do you want to learn and change and grow and add layers to your understanding? And if you do, you have to check in and go, what's the root purpose of any of this? What am I trying to accomplish? And what value is it to anybody else? And how can I do it better? And so it's different points you say, if I make this too complicated from what to get myself excited and really like do what turns me on, will anybody be able to want to pay attention? And if they do pay attention, can I explain it in any meaningful way for them? And the world we live in, you must take into account reality. People's attention span is shorter. There's more things everywhere. Every piece of content has less inherent value, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to live within those truths. I can make 3.5-hour-long things dissecting how Michael Chandler throwing a jab is how his nervous system identifies that as exactly the same thing as trying to scoop up a single leg takedown, and why that means he can learn. Why, in reality, when we're discussing boxing and wrestling, that's simply words for us. It's got nothing to do with the reality of what his nervous system is. I could get into 3 hours of that, but ain't nobody going to listen. And if nobody listens, have I done anything of value? So you have to figure out how to make all this shit happen within the realities of the world around you. And if you're going to do a podcast or whatever form you're going to do, whatever form I'm going to do for 20 and 30 years, we have to constantly understand the world. But that's the value of it, you know?
I find
we can talk about Alexander Gustafsson's jab all we want, but at some point you and I can talk about what it is to learn and grow using Alexander Gustafsson. That's useful for all of us.
I find that a really interesting thing as well, is obviously you've done what I'm doing right now with you. So you do what you interview people, you talk to people about topics like this. So for me right now, it's a very odd position talking to the person that usually does that, and it feels like I'm learning lessons from everything you say, because I'm interviewing the person that usually is the person in this seat, really.
So that's really interesting too, because I am more comfortable here.
Yeah.
I'm more comfortable when you lead the conversation. I interviewed Eddie Alvarez, and I don't even like to call it interview, because to me that creates a structure. I don't like structure. I don't like formulas, but I'll call them hangs or chats or whatever, and that's how I literally think about them. And in fact, I don't like to have overly scripted anything. I like to, to me, the more of that we do, the less truth we get to. Like
That's
when we're
true.
talking about how television, news, sports, whatever, is sort of tricking us into a line of thinking, all of these structures add to that. But I'm more comfortable when you start a conversation. I'm more comfortable as the color commentator, not the play-by-play. I'm more comfortable being interviewed than I am doing the interview. If you're more comfortable in this seat, then you found the right spot. But over time, you do both. When I just commentated in Florida, I did play-by-play with Joe Lozon, who's a fighter. I think he's still fighting it, just not this minute. And he was the color commentator. And I did that specifically to understand my job. I wanted to work with Joe too, but to understand my job in that role a little better so that I understand what you do here. And then, now I can make sense of it a bit more. But this is our jobs. If we're going to care about what we do enough to get better every day, week, month, year, for as long as we live, we got to do these things.
Of course, yeah, you got to learn your discipline by doing your discipline. That is how you learn. It is a weird concept. I mean, the amount of times I've seen you doing what I'm doing with you now, and then to see you answering the things I ask, it is a really odd concept. The world is a really weird place, but I mean, but yeah, the thing you were talking about before, the world listening to shorter things, the sound bites point that we made. I think that is a really interesting point. The fact that everything is being shortened. I didn't really think about that until you've mentioned it. Everything, the more we look at social media, the more we look at the internet, the smaller everything seems to be getting. Articles about massive topics are about one paragraph long. News reports about things going on with COVID are about 15 seconds long. How do you teach? People seem to know what they're talking about from these 15 seconds they've watched, but how can you really learn from something 15 seconds long?
The short answer is you can't, right? And as a result, and if you believe you can, you're in a lot of trouble.
Definitely.
If you are consuming, if you think you're learning about the world by watching CNN or Fox News or MSNBC, what country are you in? Are you in England?
UK, yeah.
Yeah, the BBC, whatever. If you think you're learning about the world and you believe by watching those things, and that goes for the UFC or the NFL or soccer, football, Entertainment Tonight, any of these. If you believe you know about the world from things, you are deeply vulnerable to manipulation, to completely misunderstanding the world around you, to acting in ways that are dangerous to you and the world around you because you believe you know. And it's very, very, and we can't. So what happens as you look at what it is to study a thing, anything, we look at something complicated. I'm just getting a text from DSN. Okay. I was asking about when I can get a piece of work in because I've got a lot of different moving parts and it's fun. By thinking about different things, you learn in different ways and you kind of cross-pollinate those ideas. But so to learn something is to find something super complicated. You see it, and you're like, oh my God, brain surgery, fighting, astrophysics, podcasting. It doesn't matter. All of them are super complicated. When I say to people, fighting is as complex as brain surgery, a lot of people will laugh at me.
Oh, definitely.
Usually they will be the people who don't know anything about fighting.
Exactly.
And the flaw will be that they think they do know. They're like, oh, what are you talking about? This guy threw a jab and then he shot a double leg takedown. That's not understanding a highly complicated thing. That is taking and simplifying a highly complicated thing. And to study things is to go complexity, simplicity, complexity, simplicity. Take complicated ideas and truly simplify them for yourself. And in the learning of them, new little complexities will establish. But your job is to consistently reject your own knowledge. So, for example, and if we do the opposite, we are in a lot of trouble. It doesn't matter if you misunderstand MMA fighting. It does matter if you misunderstand Brexit or global warming or
Of course.
vaccines, right?
Yeah.
Like these are difficult. The economy, like these, and they're all the mechanism of how we're being exposed to knowledge is universally kind of this. If I continue to watch fighting and somebody says, this guy's got crazy power, but this guy's got a crazy chin. And I think I somehow have learned something about fighting. And I operate as if those things are true. I now am operating in fantasy. right? The reality is power, this guy's got crazy power, is an extreme simplification, not just, uh, you know, not just for the purpose of time, because it is. The commentator only has a few seconds to
Of
say it,
course, yeah.
but it's also for hype, for sizzle, to sell a pay-per-view, to create engagement, create excitement, entertainment, etc. Power is not something we have. Power is something we create. I used to say that's not even true. Power exists. Power is something we harness or channel or harvest, right? Uh, Anthony Johnson's got crazy power. Anthony Johnson is an athlete and an artist. He's trained his body in a particular way to express a biomechanical movement with as few impingements as possible, right? Francis Ngannou's got crazy power. Nobody's got power like Francis Ngannou. If we keep thinking that's an attribute, not something that can be built, acquired, improved,
Channeled.
and it is. It doesn't matter how many times you hear a coach or a fighter or somebody on television say, power is God-given, power is the last thing you lose, power, you're either born with it or you're not. They're doing TV stuff. They're not telling you the truth. And it's not their fault. They're not trying to lie to you. They feel compelled to present a mistruth the way they've been exposed to it.
It's the way everyone else does it. It's the way everyone does it. Yeah.
It's not true. Right?
That's the thing. If everyone does it, is that not seen as the truth? Doesn't mean it is true, but it is the norm. The norm is the truth.
We all are going through the world, and there's first 10, then 100, then thousands, then tens of thousands of things that we assume is true because it's the norm. We are now not living in the reality of the universe around us. What do any of us want to do? We want to have food, water, safety, relationships, get a rewarding career or art or whatever you want to do. Some people want money, some people want power, but for the most part, those are the things we need. Those things are difficult to achieve if you don't understand the world around you, right?
Definitely.
And we are so now you could do a better job in this environment of really taking any amount of things that we hear in the world, and fighting is my area of expertise. It's what I've studied for 4 years of my life. So but I use it these days as a tool. My understanding of it, when I look, my Joe Rogan, when I was on his podcast the first time, was talking about the Book of Five Rings. To know the way broadly is to see it in all things. So if you study the economy long enough, you will understand the mechanism of learning, of how things adapt to each other. And that goes for fighting, and that goes for astrophysics, and it goes for coffee, right? You learn about, if you study something long enough, you learn process. You learn
of course.
Learning, growth.
Yeah.
So now that's what I'm trying to do as I'm studying fighting. And almost every single sentence you hear on television, if you are talking about fighting or news or politics or Trump or Biden, or it doesn't matter, almost all of them presented by themselves are either factually incorrect, or your understanding of it will automatically be incorrect because you will think it is a universal. Never move into the power hand of your opponent. Well, that sounds correct because I heard experts like, world champions have said that on a commentary, but it's not obviously fucking true, because you must move in both directions or else you'll become predictable if you only move to your left.
Of course, yeah.
You can't do that, right?
Exactly.
So it's factually incorrect. Always keep your hands up. Factually incorrect. Factually incorrect, right? If my hands are up, that's great. Now, if you're going to punch me, there's a lot of ways to punch me in and around that, kick my hand. This does nothing in a fight, or essentially nothing. But even if we assumed it did, then why might I want to put my hand down? If my hand is here, what are you going to do? You're going to punch me.
Of course.
If I want you to punch me, I put my hand down. So it's factually incorrect, right? Always keep your hands up. Okay, now I cannot create openings with which to draw you. If I drop my hands, I will do so inviting an attack. It's just simple.
It's perfect. It's a perfect example of the weekend as well. Michael Venom pitch, snake charming. It's just snake charming. You bring your hands down. Yeah. You want them to hit you, then you're out. You're back in. There's nothing they can do.
Exactly. And even when the opponent started doing it, this is a this is a flaw that we can improve our lives by trying to examine this with ourselves. We see a thing happen. You know, if you looked at, say, Bellator posted that shot, Michael Page kicked a man in the face, broke his nose, caved it in. That guy had defeated 17 professional fighters. A week earlier, people were like, well, finally he's fighting somebody real. Now they say he's
Yeah, I saw that myself.
Don't know anything specific about fighting other than what they heard on TV, which is factually incorrect. And then they'll say, look at this idiot. This is why you always keep your hands up. But of course, they're missing so many layers of comprehension of what's happening there. If I take Paul Daly, if I take George St. Pierre, if I take, Anderson Silva, and I say to them, when you're fighting Michael Page, what do you want to do? And maybe they'll say, I want to keep my hands up. And then in a fight, you'll see them have their hands down. You use the term snake charming. Modeling and mirroring the manipulation of the opponent to force him or elicit him to mirror you is a highly trained skill that if you don't even know it exists, you can become even more susceptible. So why is Michael's opponent's hands down? Because Michael's hands are down, and because Michael, and you see it all the time. I've got to, when you see Lyoto Machida, and there's thousands, millions of examples that exist on every single fight. Lyoto Machida is moving along the cage, and Chael starts to move in the exact same thing. It's mirror. And you create the mirroring in your opponent, and the longer and more subtle of a martial artist you are, you have it. Now, somebody will say to me, how do you do that? And my answer is, I've only studied martial arts for 40 years, so I don't quite have the ability to explain it, but it's real, and I can show you it.
You can see it, of course, yeah.
Why can I not explain it? Because it's such a high level of skill to do that it's I have a difficult level of understanding it, and my skill of explaining it is only 40 years old, not yet established enough. This is what skill is. This is what expertise is. This is what a road to mastery is the further you go down it, the more you realize that there were plateaus and levels you didn't even comprehend 30 years ago. You go down it long enough to understand how difficult it is to understand anything on a high level.
Yeah.
But if you don't do those things, you literally could be sitting on your couch going, Michael knocked out a can, that guy's an idiot, he didn't put his hands up.
The thing that you could also point out.
Universally, you don't know anything about fighting whatsoever.
Right? Yeah. The thing at the start as well, I think it was round one when he copied him, copied him, putting his hands up as well, and he took the mick out of him a bit. Then obviously in the later rounds, he copied Michael, doing his hands down, copying his stance. He almost lured him to copy him. It was in round one, built into his head, took the mick out of him more and more and more until the guy wanted to prove he's worth something, copied him, and then that was that.
And even our attempt to interpret it, wanted to prove, that's the best wording we can use. What's actually happening is on a level, if you, and people could, it's a tricky line because I have a friend, McDojo Life, at McDojo Life. I don't know if you've seen his Instagram and stuff. He shows frauds in martial arts. And he's been studying this for a very long time. I believe he's a purple belt in jiu-jitsu as well. And he had a couple of amateur fights and he studies martial arts and exposes frauds. And there are frauds. But then there are gray areas where it is difficult for us to explain. But then we need to find ways to be able to go, okay, yes, I understand that. And so when we're talking about modeling and mirroring and things like that, we can use words to explain how and why we believe it's happening, but we're projecting those ideas. The truth is we don't know. We don't know how and why humans do that, but they do that.
Even they don't know.
We know, and neurologists would have a way to explain what is happening in the neurology of the human, and a psychologist would have a way. But really, those guys only have 20 or 30 years of study. We don't have thousands of years of study. So we're all very rudimentary in these areas, right? And the more you study, the more rudimentary you realize we all are. And then you stop saying things like, this guy did this because you're like, I know in 2 years I'm going to realize. So, but when we look at a simple example, let's say you and I, right now, we grab a coffee and we go for a walk. We're going to walk here to the store. At some point, unknown to us, and somebody else was watching for this, they could find the point, freeze it, put a little zoom and show us.
Yep.
We will begin to walk in step, right? We will begin to walk in the exact same step. We will.
Yep.
Why? Did either one of us decide to do that? No. Did either one of us make the other one do that? No. Could one of us make the other one do that? Sure, if we spent years of worrying, thinking about it, maybe we wouldn't have the exact words, but we know the game. We know how and when we do that. That's the subtlety of extreme mastery. And nobody can see that from their couch when they call Michael, he sucks and that guy's a can. So they don't understand it. They don't know what it is. It would take them 20 years of learning to even identify it. And then when you and I are talking about it right now, people will be like, these guys are just talking bullshit because they don't know what we're saying. And this is how we are all sitting in a world right now, not understanding the world around us. Right?
And I mean, it's like,
okay.
yeah. It's like you said, you push away, you decide to understand that you don't actually know what you're talking about, and then you do know more. The knowing that you don't know it is knowing more.
It's the paradox of the wise, or whatever.
Definitely.
Right? The wise man knows he knows nothing. Right?
Definitely.
But you just said it perfectly. That is something. Just knowing that means you finally know something, and you're free to now learn. This is a limitation that's happening. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you think you're an expert in Liverpool's football team and you really just read the internet. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you think you understand fighting and don't. But this mechanism is happening universally in the world around us, and it's dangerous. There's a lot of people right now who are not happy. They feel frustrated, they feel powerless, or they feel like the government's fucking them, or they feel like they can't earn enough money, or they feel like there are people who feel like they can't have intimate relationships with other people. All of these things are functions of us thinking we understand the world around us, thinking we have expertise in every area. We have expertise in exactly 0 areas until we dedicate 10, 20, 30, 40 years of our life to one area. When we do that, eventually we'll realize how little we know. And if I came to the realization that I'm only a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm only a black belt in Taekwondo. I only had 9 pro MMA fights. I've only studied martial arts for 40 years. And, I've only managed 20 athletes. I've only commentated 500 shows, and I've only analyzed 2,000 or 3,000 fights. That's just enough to understand how little I know about martial arts. When I suddenly understand that, of what is possible to be known, not of what is known by others currently, because I don't want to compare myself to my peers. I want to compare myself to what is possible to be known.
Which is crazy.
In that grand scope, I know fuck all.
It is really crazy, especially saying the numbers makes it even more crazy. You say, because if someone watching this now might not know how much experience you have, and they'll watch it saying he knows a lot. How much experience does he have? You have all that experience, and even now you're saying you only just know. You don't know much at all.
I learned when I say I only commentated 500 fights, I also only commentated another 1,000 amateur fights in Russia and China and all over the world of 18 different martial arts, sumo and sambo and all these things. That's only enough to know how little I know. But then this is what hits you. And this takes a long time to get to this point, but it's a valuable point for life. Once I realize that after dedicating 40 years of my life, I suddenly understand how little I know about martial arts. What the fuck do I know about, mortgages? What do I know about the economy? What do I know about science or politics? What the fuck do I know about any of these things?
Yeah.
If after dedicating my whole life to one thing, I only realize how little I know now. What does that mean? I know about shit that I just am exposed to in passing. I don't know anything, but it's such a powerful and liberating thing. And I'm not trying to judge others, but if I only have that amount and I know nothing, what if you have no fights? What if you never trained martial arts? What could you possibly do, right? But you have to do enough to eventually find the true humility to realize you know nothing, and that's a big fucking journey. It's a long journey, but it's incredibly liberating.
It is. It's crazy to think about it. The person that say walks into a room, starts a conversation about, we'll say the UFC or basketball or anything, walks in,
Mhm.
says all these things like, oh, I know this fighter. He won his last 7 fights by knockout. He's this and that. He's had a 2.5 minute in the ring combined. All of this. He's saying all of this stuff. Everyone's like, wow, he knows so much. But the fact that they think they know everything by knowing these small details that you can just look up in 30 seconds, if they think they know a lot through just those small aspects, then it just shows that you need to understand that they are just surface level knowledge points really.
Yeah, I mean, so when you go to do the job, God, I look at what I thought I knew 3 years ago, and I just realized how shallow it was. And then I remember looking back at what I knew 7 years ago and thinking how shallow it was. And that reminds me to know that this is shallow. What I think I know now, if I continue by knowing that, I have the ability to keep learning. And if I keep learning, I will prove that. Right. And that's a very simple thing, but the very base level. And again, do you want to study and learn for 20 years or for 1 year 20 times? Because if you do the same thing every year, you will not change. And my business, and there are times I think it's my business, but then I realize it's universal. We're kind of stuck, right? There are, and it's because there's so many systems and formulas and things. And again, the medium through which we communicated isn't part of it. But if you talk to a producer who will produce the NFL or the UFC or whatever, they're working within the same framework that they worked 10 years ago. So we are stuck, but the internet allows this different thing. So, and Rogan is a great example because Rogan will be in the UFC broadcast. So he's got these 40-second sound bites that he can only speak at a certain speed in a
Yeah.
setup with a play-by-play guy and a different thing. But he also has 3 hour long podcasts that he's done 1,000. So he's able to, as a result, he's able to examine thinking because sports commentary is not truth.
Yeah.
It's not even close to truth anymore. Who wants it more? They fucking both want it
Yeah.
more. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That guy's
definitely.
got to go for it. No shit. Well, I don't understand why this guy isn't. Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Why? You just can't say it, or saying I don't understand is actually the narrative that we typically do. Sports commentary is a language, and it's a language that's not intended. It was never intended about truth. It was intended about entertainment. It was intended about selling things. It was intended about keeping your attention so we could sell you Doritos in the commercial. But if we believe that it is, then we're getting lost. It's a strange time. It's a very strange time. It's
Indeed.
important to know what these times and recognize if you're in boiling water and you're a lobster, you don't even know it's boiling, and then right,
Yeah.
you have to look at the water. Like you have to realize where you are and what you're in, because those things will build, allow you, they'll either stop you from progressing or you'll find the ways to let them progress. And it's difficult to be able to predict. I think, 8 years ago, I really, if you asked me, I wanted to be working at the UFC, doing the pre or post show or Fox at the time, whatever. And that didn't work for any number of reasons, including my own resistance to the structure. I didn't like it. It didn't, and had that happened, I would not be sitting in this chair, probably able to, with the freedom that I had, and the freedom allowed me to think differently. And now I see the world, and now I'm much more happy. So you never really know the direction things are going, but you have to be able to identify the water that you're sitting in.
Of
And that
course.
water is the technology, the people, how communication is working, how people are learning, how ideas are sharing, what the purpose of conversation is, what's your purpose in it, what are we literally trying to do. And at first, you're like, I'm starting a podcast or I'm making breakdowns. I got to get followers. That's not a thing. That doesn't make any sense. Because if the goal was to get followers, in the short term, the goal would be to just do whatever they say will get you
Exactly.
followers.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're not in truth anymore. You're
Yeah.
in some, and there are lots of people who do a great job at a different thing. I'll bet you one. Chael Sonnen is my friend. I admire him greatly. I think he's funny, he's charming, he's compelling, he's so good, and I love him. Um, and I was looking at something. A friend of mine sent me a clip of him today, and they said, does he actually believe this?" And it was Chael talking about the mental aspects of fighting. It's like 80% mental, 20%. He's like, "I knew when people said this was nonsense. Fighting is a physical endeavor." And I'm like, "Yes, of course." Chael knows full well that it is the mind, it is the thinking, it is how you see the world and interface with it is what allows you to perform. He knows all of that. This is a game. He also realizes that, and it's different than what this conversation is, that there is entertainment, there's provocation, and he can even look and go, if he says something that's sort of quote trolling, and people come to the other side and they say, "You're crazy, you're an idiot, it's totally mental," that there's value in that too, right? But so he's doing it from a different way. And you can definitely do that. He loves it. He grew up on professional wrestling and all these kinds of things. So that's how he does it. To me, I'm desperately on a quest to understand the truth of it, the real truth. And it's been my driving factor since the first day that I was like, I want to train for 2 or 3 years full time and then fight. It wasn't because I wanted to be the WEC champion at the time. I knew I wasn't going to be. It was because I needed to truly understand this thing that I'm obsessed with. And so we can all do it in different ways. It's not all inherently good or bad, but you got to ask yourself what I'm doing here. What's the goal of this? What are we trying to accomplish? And that, and for some people, they'll say your why. Why are you doing this? Keep that thing in the forefront. And maybe that's good advice. I don't know,
I
but
mean,
yeah, it's a fascinating trip, man.
it is. I mean, that's a really good way to see it as well. You know, when someone is studying something, say you're studying mathematics, some people will see studying mathematics and they'll study it to a degree where they can tell other people they know more than that person. They know more than the average person, so they, in theory, look like they know what they're talking about. But then there's those people that will stay on their own. They'll be studying on their own to honestly learn the actual topic they're trying to learn, and they're not learning it to be better than anyone else. They're not learning it to know more in conversation. They're learning it because they want to know the truth of what they're talking about. And that's what you do. You're not doing it to impress anyone. You're not doing it to show off. You're doing it because you want to know the truth of the fight game of martial arts.
So I say all the time that the secrets to the universe lie within the sacred moments of God, and I believe that. I actually believe that. And my life, all the good things in my life are a direct result of studying martial arts. Almost all of them. How I am with my wife, how she is with me is a function of how I, my perspective of how we react. My perspective is shaped by me understanding the world better. It makes me more, her and I get along better. I'm not going to try to shape her. I'll try to shape myself, which will make me probably better to hang around with, which will make us get along better. And that's what happens. You know, the reality of, the plateaus that you have to break through are plateaus of knowledge. There's also just a lot of good fortune in how these things unfold, and patience leads to good fortune, and you learn patience by studying martial arts. If you really want to be a black belt, you can go to a school that'll give you a black belt. So if you want to, so I have a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It took me more than a decade to get it because of the speed at which I studied related to all the other martial arts I studied. If I just wanted a purple belt, if I didn't want to achieve the knowledge of that and get it from somebody worth acquiring that knowledge from, I could have gone to a school that would have given me one. If you want to be a mental coach, you can just say, I want to be a mental coach, and you can act the way mental coaches act.
Yeah.
You'll be a bad mental coach and you'll do a lot of damage to fighters. And, like, what's his name? Diego Sanchez has a
Yeah.
coach who, has positioned himself as a guru,
Yeah.
and anyone can do that. And the world is full of people doing that. You can call yourself a MMA analyst without ever doing MMA. And if you're really good at speaking, if you're really good at doing presentations, if you're really, likable with an audience or provocative with an audience, they'll believe you.
Of
They'll
course,
believe
yeah.
you. But what you'll be doing is emulating the role of someone who has spent a lifetime pursuing expertise. So which one do you want to do? Do you want to wear a black belt, or do you want to learn the knowledge that would actually, allow you to become a great martial artist? And in the incidental of that, someone may give you a black belt. Those things are real. Patience will dictate them too. If somebody said,
Definitely.
it'll take you 7 years to get to a point where you understand Taekwondo enough to realize, oh my God, I don't understand Taekwondo. An exciting moment. Or you can get a black belt in Taekwondo in 18 months over here. Who are you? Which one? What do you want to do? This one is going to give you real value in your life. You're going to learn about the universe. You're going to learn about life. You're going to learn about relationships. You're going to learn about yourself. This will change your life. This one, you'll be a black belt. And in doing so, undermine the value of black belts. Which
Yeah,
one
and
do you want to do?
the more of them that appear as well, the more the value decreases of the belt, because obviously the belts are meant to be a reference to your knowledge, to your skill. And if you buy a black belt off Amazon, you walk around wearing it, you don't actually have to prove yourself until someone calls you out. And when they call you out, that's when you say, oh, I'm under this cheap person. And I guess in reality, a belt is a belt. It doesn't actually hold. There's no knowledge in this piece of material. It's in your head.
There is zero.
So
is zero. And
yeah,
you may not even say, well, I actually got this black belt under it. I'm not a real guy. You might actually think you're a black belt.
yeah,
And you're going to get knocked unconscious, or you're going to get badly injured or killed, right?
yeah,
The world doesn't do that right now. We're at a weird stage of it where you can just, start an Instagram page and do anything.
yeah.
And if the people who are the fake black belt, say, and for my McDojo life friend, he exposes. I love his thing is very interesting. He and I do very different things, but we're good friends, and we're both martial artists looking at the world from different ways. You can just say, I'm a mental coach. And if you are compelling enough to find some fighters, you will now be that fighter's mental coach. And now that will tell other people, that guy's a real mental coach. Look, he coaches, Anderson Silva. He sits down and he hypnotizes Anderson Silva. I guess he's right? You can start an Instagram page and let him. And if you were the fake MMA analyst or the fake mental coach or the fake, I'm not fake. You were just somebody who decided you were going to be one. You now, by not pursuing the process of the 7-year, 10-year study of Taekwondo long enough to understand you don't know anything about it, you actually don't know that's a thing. You actually now believe that all other mental coaches are just sort of, relying on their own bits of knowledge that they have. You don't know they actually know it.
Exactly.
You don't know that what it would mean to go and train with the Navy SEALs and what might have been learned from this mental coach who did that. You wouldn't know if you're going to be, Diego Sanchez's coach. You wouldn't know what having 20 or 30 MMA fights or doing any of these things. You don't understand what knowledge could be acquired through that route. You just become the thing. And we live in a world, and the flaw of that is if we can't discern the difference between an elite, true mental coach who has dedicated 20 years of his life to coaching a fight, and I'm just using that as one example, a million examples we could say about political analysts, it doesn't matter, right? If you don't understand the difference between this guy says he does a thing and he speaks really well on CNN or ESPN or whatever, and this person actually spent 40 years of their life, and here's what you lose is the process of learning. If you don't understand there's a difference between Diego Sanchez's coach and George St. Pierre's coach, you now lose the ability to, the key thing to first you would notice, okay, those two things are different. Okay. Then the next question will be, what were their process? Firaz Zahabi is a martial arts expert. What did that entail? Oh, it entailed 30 years of studying martial arts. It entailed trying and failing. It entailed physically competing. What is this guy? So now we can examine the process. By learning the process, we now gain access to, if you want to become a mechanic, you understand there's a real process to being an expert mechanic. You want to be a podcaster, you understand there's a true process to becoming a great podcaster. And it isn't how many followers you have. It's learning the truth about the art form.
Of
You
course,
know,
yeah.
there's kids who just start rapping on the internet and they might
Yeah.
have 100 million followers and the same amount as Jay-Z, but they are not as skilled as Jay-Z. So if you don't understand the difference, you actually don't understand how any one of us could master anything if we dedicated 10, 20, 30, 40 years of life and continued studied the process. We can all achieve great things. But if we think all you have to do is say you're that thing, now we lose the ability to achieve great things. We
Which
think
is
we always
happening.
should be a great thing.
It's happening a lot. I mean, the social media
Yeah.
is the probably the root cause. The internet is the root cause. That like you're saying, you can do that, and not only can you, people are all across the globe are just making accounts saying they're this, saying they're that, and there's no way to disprove it, and two, most people will go along with it. Most people will comment, oh, I've seen loads of those new people saying they're boxers, like the YouTubers saying they're boxers. They'll be
Yeah.
posting videos of them hitting a bag like Ben Askren's jokey posts, but they're actually trying, and they'll be saying, I'm a pro boxer. They'll get promotions, people saying, oh, good work, champ, you're going to be champion soon. And it's like, people need to understand, like you said, the process. Look at if they actually do know what they're talking about, what they're doing. And most of the time, it's very rare that you find someone that actually does know what they're talking about.
True. And the danger to that, this is not dangerous to you or I as much, or to anyone listening to this conversation going, yeah, that's true, I've noticed that. This is dangerous if you're a 16-year-old kid and you think the key to mastery is being good on YouTube. Being a master of being a YouTuber is a skill. That's a real skill. Being a master provocateur, being a master of manipulating media, those are real skills. Jake Paul, for example, has those skills. Those are real. Those are real skills. And some skills do transfer. So, because the skill of working hard, the skill of learning how to learn, the skill of strategizing, goal setting, these transfer to other things. But if you don't understand that Jake Paul let's say Logan Paul, let's say he's boxed for 2.5 years at a high level. If you don't understand how skills are acquired, and you're like, Logan Paul's gonna, be able to beat Floyd Mayweather. If Logan, this is gonna sound crazy, but despite the fact that he lost, Ben Askren would have a better chance of defeating Floyd Mayweather because he spent a lifetime being weird, thinking weird,
Yeah.
behaving weird. Weird is hard, right? But if you don't understand how skills are acquired and you can't identify what a fake boxer on the internet is and a real boxer is, and you think it's saying you are one and having a self-belief, this will affect how you do anything. So there are, there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of 17-year-olds right now. If you ask them what they're going to do, they say, I'm going to be a billionaire. I'm going to be Mark Cuban. I'm going to be Gary Vaynerchuk, whatever they're saying. What they don't understand is what you see of Mark Cuban isn't, I'll decide to be that. What you say is, what is the process to learning the things necessary to one day know what it is to do these things? That process is everything. But in a world where all you got to do is say entrepreneur on your Instagram and you are an entrepreneur, it's not harmful to you to learn that that's not true, but it's sort of societally harmful if we all don't understand how learning is done, how
Definitely.
growth is done.
Definitely.
And these are the things you can watch in a fight. If you watch a 3-0 fighter today, they're better than a fighter with 20 fights 15 years ago, but not as good as a fighter with 30 fights today. Why is that? What you can learn about these things. How are these things acquired? You also learn lessons about what isn't necessarily true. Even things like, I'm working on a Michael Chandler piece right now. And the deeper I've been trying to explain this idea for years now, slowly chipping away at it. As you explore anything, you find limits, plateaus, limits in your own understanding. And often they are language related. the words we use limit what we can comprehend and how we can see it. So we need, for the purpose of selling something or promoting something or commentating something quickly or simplicity, to simplify, we need to say, this is boxing, this is wrestling, this is jiu-jitsu. But
Definitely.
Michael Chandler's biology and nervous system doesn't give a fuck what words we use, right? What the actual human artist is doing is unrelated to the words that we give it in viewing, right? When Michael Chandler trains, his body understands that a deep penetrating step that then drives into a single leg is the same as a deep penetrating step that sets up a fake jab. His body has done that thing since he was a kid. His body doesn't care if you call that a penetration step to a single leg or, a deep leap into a fake jab. These are words we're trying to use to explain something that is not happening in words. It's happening on a higher level than language. Right? And so these are the limitations you start getting to, and you start bumping into them, that these limitations are there because of how we talk. And how we talk is shaped by the platforms, the interface, the technology, and the attention span, and the purpose. If I'm selling a fight, that's different than if I'm trying to truly understand.
I think all of these
these
add
are
together.
This is the adventure.
All of the points you said so far add together really as well. Like the pretending you're an entrepreneur, right? That's pretending you're something that is created by our language, created by our minds. We've made it up. Entrepreneur itself, being an entrepreneur, that doesn't exist naturally. That is not a natural thing. That is something we as humans have developed. Same as a YouTuber, anything like that, a jab, a penetration step. That's all things that we have made up, developed over time. But the actual neurology of it, the actual instinctive movements, they're the natural things. If you remove the titles of these things and you just watch the person do what they do, because if you say you see Conor McGregor throw a jab and you see Michael Venom Page throw a jab, you call them both jabs, but they're two different people doing two very different things. No punch is ever the same. So it's limits by language is a very real thing, because language is it sounds crazy, but it's made up. It is entirely fictional. Like
think of this: if I throw a jab, what we are calling a jab, and you watch it, you live in the UK, you call it a jab.
Yeah.
In China, they call it something else. But those two words are not translations of each other. They are two separate words that each represent the motion.
Exactly.
So when we go to, let's just say, I don't know the word, let's say, cup. Let's say cup is the Chinese word for jab. I don't know what it is. It is not the Chinese word for jab. Jab is not the English word for cup, or cup being the Chinese word for jab. Yeah. They are both sounds that we make in an attempt to communicate the action.
Of course.
They are not direct translations of each other. They are separate interpretations of it, and they are reliant on how you see that thing. And understanding that is massive, and understanding the limitations of that. Wrestling and boxing only matter to you if you spent your lifetime convincing yourself they matter. And when I say this, I have boxing coaches, I have kickboxing coaches, I have jiu-jitsu professor. These are people that I train with and learn from, and Duke Rufus and Faraz, and these people are my friends, and I get to talk to them about these things. And some boxing coaches will say, you don't understand, bro, it's got to be this technique this way for this long, and then we have to do this. And then a different one will say, I got a kid to express himself in a state of play for 3 years in this way, and he does it better. And they could fight all they want, but they're both true. They're both limiting their communication with the words and concepts that they have available. The human bodies don't give a fuck what we call these things. The neurology, the brain communicating with the nervous system to express movement throughout the musculature, doesn't give a fuck if we call that a penetration step to a single leg takedown, doesn't care if we call it bouncing into range to throw a jab. That body's just doing what that body's been trying.
Exactly. Yeah.
You need words to talk about it, and you may need words to describe it. And that's a big one now. This is a limitation, a complete paradigm shifting way with which you can look at fighting and communicating fighting. And these paradigm shifts are there in everything because we are all limited. We have very little knowledge. Whoever we refer to as experts, we all have very little knowledge about the thing. And then, of course, people who are not experts have infinitesimal less, although they will argue louder in a lot of cases. But we are limited by our thing. The big paradigm shifter to understand fighting is everything we say about it, we are saying in words, but none of that is being done in words. If I throw jab, cross, hook, uppercut, and Michael Chandler throws that at me, that all happens faster than my brain can say those words.
Definitely.
Also, my brain can't see it and then think in words, shift onto my weight into my right leg and fire back, step out and pivot. This has to happen. It can't be thought, right?
Which is crazy as well with the way that they do it, like you're saying, boxing, wrestling, everything like that. I understand, obviously, to a degree, when you start your boxing, start your wrestling, you have to learn the fundamentals. You know, you throw your jab, you lift your shoulder up as you throw it, you throw, you turn your hips. You have to learn these things. But then you see,
you don't have to, but we choose to, and we have found better success by doing this often.
Yeah, and then if you obviously you learn the fundamentals to then build your own martial art off of, in a sense, you find people like, say, Connor, who does his hopping movements, Michael Venom Page with his arms down, Israel Adesanya in his kickboxing, where he almost did a robot dance at one point, and people watch that and they say how amazing it is. They say they're entering God mode. But if someone like, say, me did something unorthodox, you almost you get told off and you're told to do this jab, this straight or this jab exactly as the fundamentals tell you to. And it is crazy that they're almost limiting your instincts, your body, from doing things it wants to do. Well, obviously there is reasons for it, but when you're at a higher level, you should react the way you've been taught to react. So you should react the way your body tells you to.
Well, you will learn to, and you'll do it without words.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And so if we want your default hand to be here, a lot of the time when your body's just doing things, we'll teach you to keep your hand there. And over time, 10,000 hours, 5,000 hours, 2,700 rounds, whatever we're doing, eventually,
definitely,
your body to do it. You won't have to think about it. But two master coaches, side by side, both with world champions, you can get them to easily disagree deeply about everything.
Yeah.
I was talking to, so Dwayne Ludwig is a good friend, and Eric Albarracin is a good friend. I think it was the two of them. And Dwayne was talking about the jab. And interestingly, so Dwayne was talking about the importance of the jab, and he was using the statistical results of the jab as evidence of its importance. And we talked a lot about it. And I was down 2 weeks later in Connecticut. I was training with Eric and Pitbull, and they were talking about how the jab is the thing that can be most taken advantage of, and in fact, the least important. And one has statistical evidence to support it. The other one has anecdotal evidence. And anecdotal evidence 10 years from now, when we look back, can be statistical evidence.
Yep.
As things change, the statistics are incorrect. Large scale change. Somebody says low kicks are the most important thing right now. Well, and we could look at the last 8 years and measure that. In 2021, somebody could say, actually, front kicks to the face are the most important. And in 2027, we could go back and measure to 2021 to 2024. That would be true. Why? Because this is a constant state of change. If you're ever operating as if fighting or almost anything, the housing market, fucking, food, anything is static and permanent, you are making it almost anything, you are making an error, a dramatic error.
Definitely.
Something even as simple as gravity. In 1,000 years, gravity could exert differently on us as there's more shit on Earth, right? Like something universal. People are like, death and taxes are permanent. That may not always be true. We could easily live in a society in 500 years with no taxes. And what if, we extend life 400 years on every person?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, death will appear untrue, right? Like nothing is static. So you can easily find two coaches 100 years in the future. I mean, when we look at this, right? We look at boxing and they box like this. At one time, that was fundamentals.
Yeah, originally,
the best way to do it. We look at that now ridiculously, and yet we think where we are now is perfect.
Exactly.
We will look at today and we will laugh at it the same as we laugh at this. in 2035 as it relates to all things, right? This is the truth. So as soon as you start making any, you know, almost any universal statements about anything, but essentially fighting was the example we use. Always keep your hands up, always keep your back foot, never cross your feet, always keep your front foot. Like all of these statements are untrue. And in fact, they become untrue as soon as you believe they're true, and I do not.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you believe you must, and you're Southpaw and I'm Orthodox, and you believe you must always keep your front foot on the outside, all of a sudden that's not true because I know what you believe and I can take advantage of that. Right? So all of this, these are the beautiful truths about fighting. But when we start to say this is this, this is this, this is like this, that we start to create a concrete belief that we are understanding a permanent thing. And we are not understanding a permanent thing. We are looking at an ever-changing, beautiful thing. And once you see that in fighting, and then you see it in politics, and you see it in science, and you see it in technology, you understand the world better, and you're less stressed about the world. You start. It takes a bit of time, but you start to realize, oh, the world is always ever-changing and uncertain. Within 2 weeks of the global pandemic, I started to realize, wait a second. We're all tense because we have these feelings of uncertainty. The world was uncertain a month ago too. We just had an illusion of certainty, right? There is no certainty. A meteorite could hit the Earth 20 minutes from now. That's true, right? There's no certainty. So you slowly become comfortable with that. You become serene with that knowledge, and now you can live in a world of truth, where you can work and you can learn and you can have true relationships and you can study things you're passionate about. But you have to do that, and you have to seek that out. And it sounds crazy. Somebody will tune into this conversation if they're still here. If they're still here, they're probably interested. But they'll tune into this conversation thinking we were going to talk about a striker versus grappler and a stylistic matchup winner gets a title shot. And here we're talking about this.
Exactly.
But that's a good thing. That's a good thing, you know. I don't want to talk about striker versus grappler in a stylistic matchup winner gets a title shot ever again, because it's not true. There are no strikers. There are no grapplers. Title shots are bullshit. They're not created by winning this thing. All of it's artificial.
Yeah, it is definitely like it's developed by humans. But that's the thing. It is just two humans in one limited area, instinctively opposing each other. That is all it is in reality, naturally. Because anything that isn't said, say naturally, isn't true. Really, it is developed. It's fictional, and fictional might be normal. Fictional might be something we base things off, but it isn't true. That is it. That is the truth of it. And like you're saying about boxers, grapplers, title shots, it is all just figments of our imagination. Some people stand up more. Some people are on their back more. It doesn't matter. Two natural things instinctively opposing.
Yeah, and when Usman knocks out Jorge, and people are like, I don't understand it. He's a grappler. It's just words. It's just, you said, the truth is that there's these two people. Of all the cliches on planet Earth, and I have a weird relationship with cliches. Again, most of them are untrue, right? This is one that works so perfectly. It's like when the bell goes, it is the moment. Right?
Yeah.
That's why it's so fucking fascinating. There aren't a lot of things in the world that's concise. This is true. Who are you? Who are you right now, too? Not who were you a year ago or who will you be tomorrow? Who are you right now? What are you right now? Right? And what am I? And then there's a dynamic created between us. And that dynamic, it is a universe of possibilities, not of certainty. And even if I defeat you, that doesn't mean I'm better. That means that all definitely. Of the universe of complexities and possibilities went in this particular way today, and that's forever. That result is forever, but when we do it again, it'll be different.
Exactly.
It will be different.
You can see that with Canelo Alvarez as well. When you say about the change, obviously he lost to Floyd Mayweather, I think 7-something years ago, and he hasn't lost since. And the reason being, it isn't because, well, Floyd may be better than him, may not be better than him, but in reality, it was two instinctive humans opposing each other. Canelo learned from that. He adapted his instincts to that, and he's never failed since. It is two people adapting in each moment, learning in each moment, and other moments in the future will be decided by what they've learned.
Yeah, and they'll learn what they learn will also be a result of what they learned. Like who you are in the
Yeah.
future is a result of some of the path you're on right now. You know, George St. Pierre lost to Matt Hughes, and then later, you know, defeated him twice. I believe BJ defeated him twice, um, uh, and he needed to do it. It was part of the trip. Floyd, if you want to examine Floyd, you know, people get frustrated, our
Yeah.
emotions and biases get in there, but the lesson here is the strategy. Floyd, among all the things he's brilliant at, strategy, strategically finding the ways to create scenarios in which you're already going to win or you increase your likelihood of winning. Floyd looked, and Floyd very wisely was like, this guy's getting consistently better. I either have to beat him today or in a year or 2 years or 3 years, and that will get harder. As time
Exactly.
goes on, it will become more difficult. So we must do it immediately. And that's what he did. And that's brilliant. That's brilliant. You can be mad at that all you want, but why? Why? That's how it happened. That's
Well,
what
you
he
don't
did.
want to
There's
lose,
a
do
lesson
you?
there to be learned, you know?
Like if you're going, if you're say a champion of a boxing title and you know someone's increasing in skill level, you're going to take them on at the lowest possible skill level or at their worst possible moment that
Yeah.
you can. You're not going to give them the advantage. Why would you?
Yeah,
You can't
for
be
sure.
frustrated at that.
Yeah. And then people say, well, why does he want to test himself? Because he's not you. He's this man. He's this man who sees the world this way. There's lots to be learned from that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that we do now as fans of anything, as an audience of anything, where we will, you know, we will feel frustrated by certain things. Why didn't this guy this? Why doesn't he get that? This was unfair. Well, this guy doesn't want to. Like, they don't, you know, and we'll even like this guy needs to retire. These are people.
Yeah.
You will never, ever, ever, ever control anyone else. You know, not in any meaningful way. You'll never have influence over the life of Conor McGregor or Logan Paul or Floyd Mayweather, and that's a good thing. You
It's a
can
very
look and
good
go,
thing.
okay, what do we learn? We learn about acceptance. This is what happened, how it's going down. So within that reality, how will it happen? Well, Floyd has advantages over Canelo because he's so young. Yeah, okay, right. You're going to go out into the world. And you're going to find scenarios where people have advantages over you. You may create scenarios in which you have advantages over a dynamic or a job or whatever. If we learn the appropriate lessons from this, one, Canelo turned out just fine. He made 35 million the other day. He's a great boxer.
Yeah.
Losing is
Yeah.
part of everybody's story. Made him better. He's not mad. It was part of. He wouldn't be who he is today if he didn't have that fight with Floyd at that time, right? But we can look at these lessons and draw from them. Okay, the universe is not fair, so we certainly shouldn't be mad when we see some unfairness. The universe ain't fair, right? This guy deserves a title shot. World's not fair. Like, let that shit go. There's going to be shit that's going to happen to us that's totally unfair, and that's going to be okay. And we have to be, if you can accept that and then figure out what the challenge is, where you have to grow. Maybe you take a loss, a failure, a setback in your life, and it'll shape you. All these lessons are available here.
Exactly.
They're all just sitting there for us.
Yeah.
If we get mad, this is bullshit. If Floyd fought him now, irrelevant.
It didn't
You know
happen.
who isn't thinking about that? Canelo.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, irrelevant. We can examine our own behavior and reaction to things and realize how seeing Canelo lose a fight to an older man with a brilliant strategy who had the leverage is a great life lesson. Super valuable. We should all be glad we got to see
I think
that.
you made
That'll change our lives.
definitely, and you made a really good point philosophically as well when you said about people not controlling other people, and you will never have an effect over other people in a large way. And if you think about it in a sense, people, how do people discover things, right? How did we discover how to make sticks into spoons? How did we discover anything like that? It's because people went out of their way to do unorthodox things that you don't normally do. Because if you only do normal things, you'll only ever achieve things that already exist. There's no way you're going to find something new unless you do something new. And it's like if you are being controlled by people or people are controlling you, you are sticking to a structure. And if you stick to a structure, you don't learn. You stay the same. And that's how people learn.
Yeah, it's also how do you get stuck in a thing where you're like, I feel like I don't have a lot of autonomy over my life. You're falling into the structure of the world as it's being built, and you're just a cog in it. Doing something different, it shouldn't be so. This should, what I'm about to say should not be so, but it is so.
Yeah.
You literally have to consciously decide you are going to resist copying other people.
You do. Yeah, you
The
really do.
reason you have to do that is because humans are so compelling. We have like mirror neurons built into us. The reason you talked about making a spoon out of a stick, our ancestors took a stick and stuck it down an ant hole and ate ants. And we're all looking like, you can't make that ants.
Yeah.
Okay? And we all did that, right? And then someone farmed, and then we farmed. Like all of this is what we do,
Yeah.
right? You must consciously. And that's okay, because this is the way to be in the middle of the pack. If you don't want to be in the middle of the pack, there's a number of things you have to do, but it begins with saying, I will consciously resist the natural instinct to find a successful person and emulate them. And it shouldn't be so. And for a lot of people, it's easier because some of us are always going to be innovators and people who do unconventional things. And I've been fortunate to have been one of those. Maybe it's genetic, maybe it's some fluke, maybe it was learning martial arts as a kid, maybe it was starting a rock band. I don't know. But I got to do things in slightly unconventional ways, so it's a little more natural for me. But we can all do it. But we have to first realize that's the thing.
Yeah.
There are people literally who, will say, and I mentioned Joe a couple times because Joe's one of my favorite people. Joe Rogan has one of the biggest podcasts on earth.
He really
start
does.
A podcast tomorrow, and you call it the Cameron Dunmore Experience, and you put it in a particular room, and you talk to the way you talk to Jamie, your Jamie, the same amount as him, and you smoke weed and whatever. You might believe this would be the best way to have a successful podcast, but it isn't, because there's 700,000 people trying to do that, and they're not Joe. The biggest thing, if you watch Joe Rogan do his podcast or watch anybody that is unique, you'd be like, wow, that person's so unique. And weirdly, the human reaction is, I think I want to be like that. When the step back reaction is identify the uniqueness and then strive to be also unique.
Exactly.
And it's a weird one because you also want to be yourself, but yourself, when left to your own devices, is unique. This is what authenticity is. This is the idea of actualizing what you are. Is I know I don't want to be you. Wait a second, I don't want to be anyone. Okay, who the hell am I? Well, fuck, I don't know. But now we started, right?
And that's when you start to find. Yeah,
that's right.
It's insane. It's like you say about the human instinct to copy things is mysterious and weird and crazy, but it's so real. It is so very real. Like you're just saying about walking in step in sync with someone. Or I noticed when I was kickboxing, my breathing pattern would match my opponent. That it's very real, and you don't mean to do it. And there's no way they meant for me to copy their breathing pattern. That isn't something they did. It is
How
just
do you know they're not copying yours?
Exactly.
And the truth is, you're both, right? I don't have children yet. I think we'd like to have children, but if apparently you put your child on you and your heartbeats line up. I mean,
I've heard that too. Yeah.
Yeah. This is human things, right? You don't know if he's copying yours or you're copying his.
Yeah.
And even rhythm, we could fucking literally examine rhythm for 1,000 hours, 10,000 hours. And I've done this. A friend named Sean, who was a drummer, and I play music, obviously. Not obviously, but if anybody happened to have known my past, they would know that. It's weird we say obvious. People will be like, obviously everybody knows I've got a good left hook. You'll see a fighter on it, that's it. No, actually, it's not obvious. We don't know you. The world's full of people. Nobody knows my story. Nobody knows your story. Assume people don't know anything because we're all busy thinking about ourselves and learning in our own trip. So,
of course.
But yeah, rhythm. People talk about breaking the other's rhythm. Now, if we just say that, that's cool. It sounds cool. But what really is it? What's the mechanism? I spent a lot of time with a professor of psychology who studied by hooking them up, studied the brain activity of jazz musicians when they were soloing and then when they were improvising together. And you can watch their brain activity start to line up in rhythmic ways.
Which is crazy.
That's fucking nuts, man.
It's
And of
absolutely mad.
course, yeah, it sounds
Yeah.
insane. And of course, Cub Swanson and Frankie Edgar are going to. Some of that is happening in their brains,
Yeah.
right? And it's so I get worried for a moment. I can't worry about other people. None of us can. We have to think about what we can do to learn and if we can possibly influence people. But I'll do one of my breakdowns, which is incredibly simplified versions of some of these things. And people are like, bro, it's just fighting. It's not fucking science.
Yeah.
You might actually think that. It wouldn't occur to you that something's happening biologically, neurologically,
Yeah,
emotionally,
exactly.
and the things that we don't yet understand. But like 1,000 years in the future, we'll understand the what is happening in this interaction of our two brains right now in ways we don't understand it today, right? Of course that shit's happening, right? So what does that mean? And where does that fit? All I know is one, I have the good fortune of being able to now do this, right? Um, you know, figuring out what I could hope to explain in 2 years if I work really hard to make sense of it in a way that doesn't sound nuts, insane. And then take the things now that I've spent the last 2 or 3 years trying to examine and now show them in my breakdowns in a way. I can do this now. I get to my entire living and business and job is now freed me to do that. So that's a very unique scenario, and it's a beautiful thing. Like, you know, I have paid jobs still that are in environments where I do wear a suit and I do have structure and I am given the question in advance and I only have 45 seconds and the audience, we presume something about the audience and what they do or do not know about martial arts or what they will and will not accept about conceptually. And I have that framework. But what I can put in that framework on SportsCenter is now the thing that was really new and on the front end of trying to understand 2 years ago that I've now found the way to simplify it in such a way that
Yeah.
it'll be new and interesting, but I can make sense of it. Then I
Yeah.
also have things that I'm trying to understand that are 3 years in the future that I'll be able to play with on a 5-minute breakdown or on a YouTube channel or chatting with you. And it's in a constant state of figuring what could we know in 5 years and what can I explain today and what do I hope to explain in 2 years. And that's the gig. It's a really fucking cool gig. It's a really like incredibly like free thing. But as much as we said how the universe or the internet can be harmful to us, the internet and these technologies have allowed me to now do this.
Exactly.
So
That's true.
it's a weird time for trying to share public ideas about anything, because anyone can do it, but it also, it's also liberating in a lot of ways, and it gives us a chance to do things.
I
So
think two.
it's a weird period.
It is a weird, yeah, indeed, it is very weird. And there's two things you said again that link together really well, which you said about their people in the cage, their people, and the fact that people say there's no emotion involved or it's just fighting. You're saying there's emotion involved, and obviously they're humans as well inside that cage, not just cartoon characters. I think someone I interviewed previously called Shark.strong. He's a boxing coach at Box and Burn. He was saying about
Yeah. I've trained
yeah.
there in LA.
Yeah, with a Tony Jeffries gym. It's he's a very inspirational character. He talks about his he suffered late stage cancer. He had a cardiac arrest during his Ukrainian swimming championships, things like this. And he was talking about boxing and the people in boxing, not just boxing as a sport, but the actual humans inside the sport that keep the sport going. And he was saying that people never consider the fact that a boxer might, the night before have an argument with his wife. That would change the outcome of the fight. He might sprain his ankle walking in, changes the outcome of the fight. He might receive a call from his girlfriend saying his dog died. That would change the entire outcome of the fight. It's a totally different fight.
Diarrhea from cutting weight. That would change the outcome of the fight.
Honestly.
And his fear about it, or his anxiety. Now I'm sick. Oh, if I'm sick, am I going to run out of energy? Just those thoughts. Well, I mean, of course, these are humans. Right?
And you have this boxing game. Say, the little boxing robot games. You press it, they punch each other. They are identical. They are exactly equal. You press them, and it's just a game. But when you go into actual fighting, two people with two different thought processes, two different backgrounds, two different stories, two different situations. One's a challenger, one's a title holder. They could be thinking the champion could be more worried than the challenger. It doesn't actually matter what they appear as. They're not video game characters. They are humans too who have the emotions to run off.
And they are in a dynamic relationship.
Yeah.
So how you feel now will affect me, and what I do and think and act and express can affect you. So
Yeah.
how we felt in the days, weeks, hours, minutes before, even like these, when Canelo landed the big punch and got more and was
Yeah.
more and more engaged, and his man has a broken orbital bone and is fading. Whether he can, I mean, his orbital bone is so broken and damaged that, it's irrelevant probably anyways. But if it wasn't, you could literally convince, I'm getting slower, I'm getting weaker, I'm not seeing things, I can't breathe. This motherfucker is just getting started.
Yeah.
You don't have to think that consciously to feel that. You just have to feel it. You may never explain it in conscious words. And our language is a big problem in our understanding. Language gets, and the relationship of it. Our language has become simpler.
Definitely.
As the world has become more complex. Can you imagine the fact that we will sit, and I'll do this with friends, and I've done this with great people. One guy I was on a piece of media he was doing, and he's a bettor, and bettors it's a skill. Betting is a talent. And he said that he made X amount of money this year betting on fighting, and that he was correct 50.8% of the time.
Yeah.
Which in the world of betting is a lot. If you're making intelligent bets that have been placed in an area in a way that your betting skill and knowledge and ability favors you, and you're right over 50% of the time, you're gonna make a lot of money. So
Yeah, definitely.
But we went through these motions, and I kept trying to point it out to him. He would say, well, this guy's got great range management, and this guy's an amazing wrestler. He's got 10 submissions, and this guy, he really lights people up with the right hand, and so I'm going with this guy. And I was thinking, this entire mechanism we're going through, although entertaining and fun, is pointless.
Yeah.
You're right half the time. You're wrong half the time. All of this stuff is irrelevant. This may get clicks, it may get likes, it may make people follow my breakdowns, it may do all kinds of stuff, but it's not real. Because more important than this guy's an NCAA Division II wrestling All-American, more important than that is this guy's dog died. But we don't know that. So we're going through all the motions of barely relevant things that represent this of our entire possible knowledge, this tiny bit of it, and yet we're putting all this weight into it, and we're right half the time. Because it's impossible. Now, that doesn't mean don't bet. That guy's a great bettor. He makes a great living, and he has a lot of fun, and it's really good. And so if it's something you enjoy, by all means. But you can do it without this bullshit. This guy's got great takedown defense, and this guy's, submitted a lot of people. So you're right 50% half the time. So what are we even doing here?
You can place your bet, and
we're trying to be entertaining, but in being entertaining, we're misrepresenting truth and making the audience think they understand what is important about understanding the world around them, and in fact, we are making them not.
Which is also another thing to do with humans mirroring human nature is as well that the fact that humans are so easily manipulated when it comes to, say, movements. Michael Venom Page again, manipulating the way they move, or thoughts. There's plenty of people, politicians do it all the time. You say specific things, you get specific reactions. The humans are so easy neurologically, mentally, easily to manipulated. They can be told small things and they will believe big things. It's
really crazy. We don't notice it.
We don't. That is why it's so easy. We're
more susceptible than we ever have.
Yeah.
I don't get too much into politics, but lock her up, build that wall, or the big lie. Doesn't matter which side you're on. The big lie is this side, and then this side's like build that wall or make America great. These are slogans.
Yeah.
Slogans sell fucking coffee and
marketing.
And UFC fights.
Exactly.
That's supposed to shape how you think about the world.
Exactly.
But they do, because we've been taught that they do, and we've been consuming media in jargon and slogans and sound bites and narratives for so long it dominates our thinking.
Definitely.
And there's a whole world of people waking up to this. And if you somebody's watching this and has been watching it all the way along, they're among them. You know, just
Yeah.
the, we are among it. The whole world, but there is a segment of the world who will speak louder than the segment that may have this conversation, who will literally, whether they're talking about a UFC fight or they're talking about MSNBC or whatever, they will speak louder and they'll be certain they are correct. And that is our biggest weakness in anything in our life. Because if we think we know a lot, we are in a lot of trouble. We don't know shit about shit, like I said earlier. If you study anything your whole life, you come to that realization. And if you realize how little you know about something you dedicated your life to, how the fuck much do you know about anything?
No, that is the coolest thing that I've just realized as well is we have made a loop, and this loop it is long. It's really long, but it is also to do it. It links to your point about thinking you know loads when in reality you know so little. We've spoke about everything we've spoke about right now is all one small topic. We could highlight all these points, and they're all under one umbrella term, which is humans and the way they react. And that's all we've been talking about this entire time. Yet we've been speaking for a long period of time, and it is crazy that like you were saying about the way you see shallow things. There's another point I was going to say earlier. You said about when after you have learned more, you'll look back and see things as you used to see it in a shallow way. And obviously, the higher you climb, the smaller the things below you look. So if you get more knowledgeable and you look back and you think, oh, I had deep knowledge then, you haven't learned enough. You need to learn more, and then you see it as shallow.
Yeah, you gotta be wrong. You know, the whole goal with science or learning or study or the road to mastery is disproving what you think you know. And if you're in a continued quest to do that, you realize, and slowly you just, you know, I don't know if it comes across, and it's a job of mine to continue to try to make this come across. I'm trying to, as the further I go, speak less and less from a position of authority about martial arts or anything, and speak from a position of curiosity and a desire to learn more. Because you
Yeah,
got to get there. Like you got to get to that point where it's just, and if you're deeply curious and you're not, and you oppress or repress your natural ego, which we all naturally have over time, we learn to not have it. We'll realize, okay, don't be so precious about what you think you believe. And even something as simple as, and these things get absorbed into the mainstream, even if you came up with something or I came up with something, or we believe we did, even though many other humans may have at the same time or before us and just didn't come across it. It'll get consumed into the mainstream and it'll seem normal. It might take you your entire lifetime to understand that fighting is happening at a speed at which it doesn't use words. Therefore, the description through which we're doing it, therefore, entirely the whole way we are discussing it is deeply flawed. But as soon as that's accepted, that's just gone now. That's just gone. Now you have to start at the new place and push yourself to where the limit of that is so that you can
exactly.
then break through and know it again.
Yeah.
I talked to Greg Jackson about this, Coach Greg Jackson, after Cub Swanson fought Duho Choi, which was amazing. And I think I spoke to Cub Duho, Duho went to the hospital. His boxing coach and Greg Jackson about it, and Greg was like, the cool thing for him about martial arts is, it gets super wide and then super thin and then super wide and then super thin. Basically, what he meant was like, you'll have like, oh my God, we misunderstand. We are trapped in the paradigms that we think we are. So, for example, wrestling, grappling, boxing, jiu-jitsu, none of that is actually real in terms of a modern mixed martial arts fighter.
Yeah.
But still, we talk about it. So we'll have to work a long time until that is not so. But as soon as you realize that, you're like, okay, then what the fuck is going on? And how do we make sense of that? And how do I understand that? And then how do I understand that in a real way? What do I learn on the path of understanding? And then how do I explain it in a way that people won't think I'm crazy and will get some value out of this path? Oh shit, I got a big job and I may never achieve it. And people might just think I'm. And then eventually, if it makes sense and you do make sense of that, now it becomes a little thing. It's about, oh, this is how my brain processes fighting. It's got nothing to do with the words we use. Great, that's a small thing. Now we examine that, and we get to a big thing again. Or we get to another small thing. People are kicking each other's calves. Well, you got to get to the big thing. Why would they kick each other's calves? Well, as we start, over time, fighting became further apart.
You zoom in.
Yeah, as fighting was further apart, I'll use my longest weapon and I'll hit your closest target.
Yeah.
And I would start doing that.
And there's
Then
also
what we do,
the power from the legs as well. When you think about it deep enough, like they were saying about boxers, they always talk about boxers and their legs as saying, "Oh, just kick their legs and they can't punch anymore." It is a true thing. Like you're saying, you zoom into these small little aspects, like
I zoom into a little detail, but then the detail is
becomes big.
untrue in the context of everything. So
Yeah.
I'll say, oh, blah blah blah. All you got to do is kick Nate Diaz's calf. Oh,
Yeah.
then Chris Weidman breaks his leg in half. At first, we say, oh, well, that was weird. Well, 6 months, another guy broke his leg in half on the weekend in kickboxing. Why? Because they're gonna fucking break their legs in half. You're smashing a thin part of your bone against a thin part of another guy's bone. A year from now, all these fucking calf kicks, everybody spamming each other with calf kicks, will be gone.
Yeah.
And it'll be a very rare thing used in minimum ways. Why? Because some people are going to break the legs in half. That'll deter a few of us. Other people will not break their legs in half, but they'll get badly hurt and they can't keep moving because of the small turnout of that. Other people will get knocked unconscious. There's already been 8, 10, 15 knockouts mid calf kick because that's easy to do.
Which is the statistic.
And it gets easier to do.
Yeah.
If there's a new offense, we all do the offense. Then the next layer is the counter or the defense starts to become predominant. Why do people not do Superman punches much after they did them for a long time? Because they got knocked out when they did them.
Yeah.
It became too easy to interpret because all my training partners do it. So now when you do it, I knock you out. And it goes away for a while. Then it goes away, then nobody's training it anymore. Nobody's training it for a while. Then you make a small change to it. All of a sudden, Anthony Pettis does one, varies it slightly, knocks out Wonder Boy.
Off the wall.
It's a thing again, right?
The cage.
And calf kicks are the same. You don't think fucking Thai fighters spammed each other with calf kicks 800 years ago? Of course they did, until they realized, fuck, we fight a lot and we're all smashing our legs. We're getting knocked out. We're becoming too predictable. We can't do that much anymore. And it goes away. But this is happening. We're only seeing the moment it happens. We're not seeing the grand moment, which is, why did it happen? Where is it? What's going to happen? And what's going to happen is 5 or 6 guys and women get knocked out throwing a calf kick in a row. Corey Anderson got knocked out by Jan Blachowicz. I got on my Instagram page 3 or 4 posts back, Patricky Pitbull knocking out Ryan Couture throwing a calf kick. It happens all the fucking time, but people think calf kicks are consequence-free. They're not. You can break your leg, you're gonna get knocked unconscious, you're gonna get countered. Anytime something seems consequence-free, it's only a minute until the consequences start showing up.
Which makes you wonder how when you mentioned Thai fighters, I was thinking calf kicks, I was thinking Liam Harrison, leg kicks, calf kicks. Liam Harrison is the best for that sort of thing. And you see him, even him, the person that is supposedly known for his calf kicks, even he doesn't throw them as much as you'd expect someone known for that to throw them. And that's because, like you're saying, it becomes predictable, and he's knowledgeable enough to know that he's becoming predictable, so he will slow down on throwing it.
There was I did a breakdown of a guy who's one of the great karatekas ever on planet Earth, Karate Combat, which I really enjoy. And he's landing this Yokizaki reverse punch in this, and it's working. And in it, I'm like, some people will find something that works and use it ruthlessly, just continue to use it. Others will find it's working, then deploy it to occupy the mind of the opponent, the defensive systems of the opponent, and then while it's occupied that way, do something different, right? That's a higher level. Continuing to do the same thing because it works, how many times are you going to do it? If you're a master, you can do 12 of it and nothing happens. If you're kind of a master and he's quite good and he's adaptive, on the 3rd time, he's going to fuck you up.
Definitely.
You use it as misdirection. You use it to occupy, space within the focus. And that's what, the best leg kickers do. Liam Harrison, you're right. Liam Harrison is spamming. Like, it's too dangerous. But the modern young, there's also, it's so narrative driven. It's a thing of the time too. There's a narrative. Calf kick, new thing, bro. Fucking every gym on planet Earth has been countering calf kicks for the last 3 years. Just because it's new to somebody on Twitter, it was not new when Michael Chandler lost his belt. In 2017, it wasn't new then. And so, of course, everybody's been doing it in gyms. Just because, it gets talked about in 2020 doesn't mean that's when it was a thing. And again, you talk to you don't see, actually, I saw an interview before Chris got her leg broken with Valentina Shevchenko, and they asked him, just some reporters like, calf kick, I heard that's a thing. And she was like, no, that's too dangerous to be just
Yeah.
throwing. Because she's an expert, right?
Yeah.
She's a overall expert in martial arts. And there's a big difference between being a martial arts expert and a practitioner of the sport of fighting.
Definitely.
A practitioner of the sport of fighting is learning according and changing according to the information coming in the modern context. A martial arts expert works with deeper concepts, and what's happening in a 1 year period or a 6 month period or trends is nothing new to he or she, like Valentina, because she has such a more, sort of universal understanding of the whole thing.
Exactly.
Right? So
Yeah.
she's looking at it going, hey man, you guys want to fucking spam each other with calf kicks, go for it. I ain't doing that. I'll throw the odd one in there, but yeah.
And she's the one winning.
Too many
She's the one winning as well. You're practicing your calf kicks because you want to become good, but the one that's good isn't throwing them. Does that not cross anyone's mind?
It's a 15-minute thing, and it's cool. It's neat that and there are hundreds of trends and micro trends happening at any time, and only one or two of them will get picked up in that public narrative,
Yeah.
and it'll only be the most conspicuous ones like this, right? Yeah. If you just think you learned something because calf kicks are being discussed. Sorry,
So good.
calf kicks are being discussed. My phone's about to die, so we'll have to.
Oh, good. Yeah.
But if you think you learned something because you saw calf kicks, well, seeing a trend and then thinking the trend is deeply meaningful is not the same as understanding how trends come and go and are exploited and manipulated. And that's what a real martial artist will, Valentina Shevchenko will see.
Of course.
But yeah, it's a fascinating thing. We'll study forever, and I hope we'll bring clips of this in when you and I chat years in the future, and we'll laugh at how little we knew.
When I have a successful podcast sitting here with all of the UFC fighters answering my questions, that's it. Do you have time for two questions that I was
yes.
that picked two questions out of many people asking me to ask you questions. One of them is, what is the origin of Bink?
Literally that idea. When I say that people should resist the urge to copy others, it is somewhat natural for me, and in fact, I have a knee-jerk reaction to just wanting to do it. So in a world where everybody, oh my God, boom, the show, that's crazy, wow, everybody was doing that. It was just in my nature to go the other way. So I started going, bink, bink. And I just started doing it. I made myself smile, and I would do it, and I kind of got in the habit of it, and it just became, I didn't know it was like, I have the trademark to it now. I sell Bink shirts online, I didn't know it was going to be a thing. But then after about 30 or 40 or 50, and people kept mentioning it, then I thought, oh, maybe it's a thing. Feels natural. I wouldn't do it only because it's a thing. I didn't do it to become a thing. But as it started, and the only reason it was, the only real one, I liked it. And I used to always think of that, and even when I would sit with my friends, I would say it. And so it started to make its way into my 1 minute breakdown. But then I think the lesson for me was, it literally was the opposite of what everybody was doing.
Definitely, yeah,
and
it really
not that
is.
the opposite is always the right way, but doing what everyone is doing, I've got friends that work in commentary, like, boom, still they're not making shirts. People are calling them the boom man. And not that they should want that. But I think it's just evidence that just doing what everyone's doing for the sake of that's what to do is probably not fulfilling. It's not authentic, probably, unless you're authentically someone who copies people, which is fine. That's nothing wrong with that. And probably isn't all that valuable. So it was a thing that was a natural thing that later I understood was a thing. And then, like I normally do, I got curious about why it was a thing, and I learned from that.
And you saved it, and now you have the copyright. That's pretty cool. And the other thing was Tony Ferguson. What are your, as a experienced analyst, as an experienced martial artist, what are your thoughts on his unorthodox fight style? Because it's something I've heard a lot. People talk to me a lot about it, and people say he looks stupid. Some coaches of mine say they don't agree with the way he fights. Some people say it's a really smart way to fight. What is your view on someone such as him?
There was a long, I'm just quickly doing this just to get the number. There was a long stretch where he was very undefeated.
Yeah,
Where
yes, 14 win streak, I think, or
yeah, come on. So so yeah. Oh, yeah, you look at it. Yeah, let's call it 14. I mean, I look at it on Tapology. It's
yeah,
green, 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 green.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So, like, how did he beat Josh Thompson, Edson Barbosa, Lando Venata, Rafael Dos Anjos, Kevin Lee, Anthony Pettis, Donald Cerrone? He beat them because he was weird.
exactly.
Weird is good. In fighting, weird is hard. Why did he lose to Justin Gaethje and Charles Oliveira? Because he was less weird because they saw him over. And that's part of the game, right?
Yeah,
When Joe Rogan said, "Welcome to the Machida era," didn't matter whether he lost later or not. In that moment, Machida was hard to fight. Now, when only just and Machida knocked out Shogun after they fought for 25 minutes the first time. Oh no, he lost the first time. In a single fight, one single fight, we can understand a fighter different. Often we don't, but we can. Right?
yeah,
And when the Machida era, whether it was going to last for 25 fights or for 6 months, it was a real thing because he was different, and different is hard. In fighting, different is hard. But eventually, different for its own sake is not enough. I think I love watching Tony Ferguson fight. Very much the same thing we were just saying. He does things that are counterintuitive and go against the grain, and that worked. Everybody said the guard. Now you see people slashing each other open with elbows from the guard. When he was doing that at first and pulling guard and using entries into standing chokes to get guard, everyone said the guard is dead. Never fight in the guard.
yeah. Never pull guard. Yeah,
never pull guard. And that's not true. And it's never been true. And in that period, it wasn't true. And Tony knew it wasn't true. The guard is an offensive position. I have 4 limbs. I have 2 legs, 2 arms, and I've segmented you into only the top half. It's an advantage. Right? So all of these things that he did with universal truths, factual truths, not belief systems and doctrines and dogma. And no offense to any coach that has said this guy fights bad or whatever. They believe the way they learned that it must be done this way.
of course.
And it mustn't. There's not a coach in the world who has the way. Unless the way is to slowly improve the physical, the mental, the mobility, the natural expression, the artistic ability of somebody, and that's their way, and they have 100 different ways to do it, that's probably the closest to the way. Tony Ferguson was winning because he was authentic. He was an individual. And fighting an individual is harder than fighting. When you go to fight somebody, when John Kavanagh has his fighters go in, they want to not worry about the individual. They want to not worry about what that person says, thinks, does as much as possible. We're worried about our own emotion and our own mentality. We are going to classify them as a body type and a collection of skills.
Yeah.
So I'm fighting a body type and a collection of skills. Tony's a body type, but the collection of skills and the way it's used are hard to predict.
Very.
And the very difficult, why was it hard to predict? Because it's wrong, right? It's wrong.
It
ain't wrong. I'm using it in quotes because that's the only word that we may have to describe it. If this is correct, then this is wrong. It's not wrong. Because he formed as an individual artist, and as an individual artist, he behaves in ways that are not predictable. And unpredictability is very powerful. But 14, 15, 16 fights of being able to watch him, even just watching him, our brains start to identify it. We don't have to do it in words. Oh, his rhythm is this. He uses some Chinese martial arts concepts. He steps in weird ways, whatever. Yeah. We don't have to identify it necessarily in words, but we recognize how it, and it becomes less unpredictable, i.e. more predictable. And when it does, we're defeating him because, when he knocks you out doing something wrong, it's not a bug, it's a feature.
Yeah.
When you knock him out doing something wrong, it's not a feature, it's a bug. It was the same thing. And that's fighting. And he'll change more or less, or become more predictable or less predictable. But when your strongest trait is unpredictability, there are root ways to try to defeat it. And Definitely. They go back to the most simple movements we can use, your most reliable options.
Your
with high
instincts.
percentage choices, jabs and low kicks. Like
Yeah,
that's how you defeat unpredictable as best you can. And Justin Gaethje did that.
indeed. Yeah. I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
You too, man.
As always, like watching your videos and then talking to you. It's almost mind-boggling the complexity at which you can see such, well, people would say simple things, but nothing simple. And the way you make it so clear as well. It's been awesome. Thank you. It's been absolutely awesome.
Thanks, man. It's my pleasure. Do you want to do it again in like 6 or 8 weeks or 10 weeks?
I would be more than happy to. I'd be more than happy to.
Yeah, let's do
Thank
it
you
because
very
I
much.
enjoyed it immensely. So,
Oh,
so
I'm
let's
glad.
definitely do it. Let's stay in
Awesome.
touch.
Thank you. Yeah, we will
All
do.
right.
Thank you,
Yeah.
man.
Enjoy the hostility.
I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted to do that. Yes. Thank you.
You're very welcome, man. We will talk to you soon.
See you later.